Hello, everybody. I just finished completing chapters 15 and 16, I believe, which was also part 4 in our book, Power of the Magdalene. And I wanted to keep reading, so I'm just back doing another back-to-back video because it was shorter. I think it was about 17 minutes or almost 18 minutes. So we're going to start part 5, titled The Da Vinci Phenomenon. And we start out with a quote by Victor Hugo. "It is possible to resist invasion by armies, but much more powerful is an idea whose time has come." And chapter 17 is titled The Cathars, Cathars. One of the most extraordinary developments in recent times has been the Da Vinci phenomenon. Beginning with the books The Holy Blood and the Holy Grail and the Da Vinci Code, and peaking in the Da Vinci Code movie and a plethora of television programs, DVDs, books, and articles exploring the same territory. One major aspect of the Da Vinci phenomenon is the story of the Cathars and the link between the Cathars and Mary Magdalene. The Cathars were a movement of independent Christians inspired by Gnostic ideals, which flourished mainly in southern France and northern Italy between 1140 and 1244 CE. We were starting to get the feeling that the Cathars were coming into focus for us, and our work with Kathy Welchman continued. We came across Lives with the Cathar Resonance. During separate sessions, Kathy relived 2 lives in southern France when she had contact with the Cathars. In the second of these, she was a young girl who was tortured and killed by the mercenary soldiers employed by the Roman Catholics. She had been a Cathar sympathizer at that time, but not actually a Cathar. In the first of these lives, she was a monk called Pierre, and we join him as a young man traveling with his father Joseph among the abbot of Citeaux. Sorry, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but it's an abbey near Dijon. This large abbey was founded in 1098 as a Benedictine monastery, but reached the peak of its influence in the 13th century as part of the Cistercian order. In its heyday, it owned a number of properties throughout France, including land near Mirepoix, which lies southwest of Carcassonne. Pierre, so now we're speaking to Pierre, the boy traveling with his father Joseph. "We're going to meet the Cathars in a fortified town, and most of the inhabitants are living openly as Cathars. They feel a sense of comradeship with us because we're all French, and we're both afraid of what the Roman Pope is doing. We can only think he means to take over France. He wants the power. In our monastery, we follow the way of the Magdalene and the chalice." Joanna, "Can you tell me about the way of the Magdalene and the chalice?" Pierre, "The chalice is of love. To do to others what you would expect to be done to yourself. To dip into the chalice is to link with all other healers, to feel as they feel, to expect to receive what you give out. That's why we're allowed to be married. It's part of the love of a human being. The Roman Church doesn't allow their priests to be married. It's a form of control. They must give all of their life to the church and not have anything else interfere." And I will say this, taking away something that is very natural to being a human being, which is that romantic love, for lack of a better term, and the sexual act between a man and a woman, really does lend to some of the things in particular in religions where priests, or whatever they may call themselves in other religions, cannot be married. It seems that sometimes it causes issues in the psyche where other things come about that are far more detrimental than being married. Because I know in many religions, if you are a religious leader, you are considered being married to God. You wear a wedding ring, but you are married to God. Here in France, it's been that way for centuries for the monasteries, trying to dispense love to the people and teach the people how to be. We're peacemakers. People come to us to receive compassion and forgiveness. We help them to understand how they should forgive and live with their neighbors in peace. Joanna, do you know where this teaching comes from? Pierre, it comes from the Lord. The Lord sent his emissaries out. We received the word and we've been keeping it. It's not the Pope. The Pope is telling us to subjugate anyone who doesn't do what he says is right. That's not a path of peace. Joanna, so you find some similarities with the Cathars. Pierre, they're different, but they're still working to live peaceably with each other. They do have some strange religious practices that we don't have. Many people take a vow towards the end of their lives, but some take it earlier and they remain celibate. We don't do that. Joanna, and it's all tied in with Magdalene, or Magdalene, Mary Magdalene? And Pierre says, yes, we are. Joanna, but are the Cathars also? Do they have some link with the Magdalene? Pierre says, I'm not sure. It's we who remind ourselves how the Magdalene came. Joanna, how did the Magdalene come? Pierre, she traveled with her kith and kin, sailing by sea to our shores. At this point, there was a pause and a sharp intake of breath, as if the subject was experiencing a deep emotion. Joanna, what's making you so sad? Pierre, that she brought goodness into our land and it's all being destroyed by this evil man, this Pope. You can feel it. It's tangible. He's blowing black clouds over a region that's been peaceful for many centuries. We've grown in love and suddenly it's all changing. We have a history that goes right back, and the Pope is even destroying our history. He's burning books for no good reason. This is very interesting. I, being raised Catholic, was always taught to look at the Pope as probably like the highest living being as far as religion goes. It's only after the maybe past several years of my life that I have stepped back and kind of dug into some of the popes that have been, holding that seat, and also the Vatican, and have learned some things that I really don't think coincide with their message of love and God's love and peace and equality and the things that sort of you would expect a religion to represent, that to me are the complete opposite. Joanna, is there a story of where the Magdalene came from? Pierre, yes. She came from the Holy Land to spread the word of the Lord to us. We've written about it in books and they've been destroyed. And we're trying to hide the knowledge, and it feels as if it's all coming to an end, and we won't be able to live this way of life. We've never met the Cathars before because we've never needed to, but now we're traveling because the papal edicts have decreed this is what we do. We travel and report back what the Cathars are doing. We know underneath that we'd rather side with the Cathars, but we must report back. We must write what we find. If we don't, we'll be in trouble. It feels very dangerous, this path. We're on nobody's side. We can't be on the Cathar side, even though we'd prefer it, because we're doing work for the Pope. We don't want to be on the Pope's side because he feels so dangerous. He feels as if he's coming straight from the devil. But of course, he's paying for the monastery to exist. The coffers in Rome are filled up, and if you don't do as asked by your master, you'll cease to exist. And we must protect the way of the Magdalene somehow. The message of the Magdalene was to share bread with everyone you love. Share. Remember in love to understand your neighbor. The best way to understand your neighbor is to break bread and eat with them. Share. Many, many quarrels have been settled over a meal. Joanna, and also the healings were very important. And he says, Pierre, we're getting to the point now where we can't even give people healing. The Pope has set up apothecaries and they give a potion which doesn't do anything for the people. Oh, the beginning of Big Pharma. We're learning a little bit about that. Comment by Stuart. That was the last significant thing to come from Kathy's life as Pierre. It had given us an interesting view of the Cathars from a sympathetic French standpoint, even if that view had come from within the Catholic Church. One interesting thing about Pierre's life is how it points up the sharp differences between the French Catholics and the Italian Catholics, focusing through Rome. In the Italian view, Mother Mary was the all-important female icon, and Mary Magdalene might be accepted as a peripheral witness, but never as a major teacher and leader. From this account, it seems clear that the Magdalene tradition in southern France had been kept alive for 1200 years, becoming absorbed within the 12th century monastic culture of the Languedic region. I think I say that every time differently. Languedoc region. How widely this tradition was accepted by the monastic orders in this region is not clear. Perhaps some local beliefs may have been tolerated for a time, but a succession of Italian popes steadily increased the centralization of control over Catholic life. Information on the Cathar period, once of interest only to historians, has now started to reach a much wider audience, largely due to the Da Vinci Code and to the Holy Blood and the Holy Grail. This has opened up a number of questions, one of which was a legend which had intrigued us. This legend focuses on a fortified town in the Languedoc region of southern France called Montségur, which was besieged by papal forces in 1244 CE. The Cathars stronghold stood on top of a small, steep-sided mountain, and when the besieging forces took the fortress, they dragged down and killed over 200 Cathars. It is said that a small band of Cathars, perhaps only 3 or 4, had escaped by climbing down from Montségur on the night before the fortress was captured. They were said to have carried away with them something of great value, and we were able to ask Ilariel about this. So now we're going to go back to talking to Ilariel. Joanna, when the small group of Cathars escaped from Montségur, what did they carry away with them? Ilariel, their most precious scroll dating from the time of the Gnostics, demonstrating that there was a direct link between the Gnostic tradition and the Cathars. This scroll was ancient by that time, and it was much revered by the Cathars. Yet sadly, the Cathars had nowhere safe to go. No one wished to be associated with them in case they should face the same fate. And after the massacres in southern France, it became very dangerous even to be seen talking with the Cathar or giving them shelter. Joanna, and how would you assess the Cathar movement as a whole? Ilariel, the Cathars provided in Languedoc an alternative focus of Christian culture, a focus which respected the earth and honored the sacred feminine. However, it was not as pure a form of Christianity as the Gnostic movement, and some aspects of Cathar theology can only be described as eccentric. Yet for the most part, the Cathars did live in unconditional love and Christian harmony at a time when this was almost unknown anywhere else in Europe. Comment by Joanna. The Cathars in southern France were the descendants of those who followed Mary Magdalene's teachings, the inner teachings. So they followed a course very much more as the inner teachings were supposed to be. The Cathars' lifestyle and teaching was also very close to the Essene way. The Catholic Church did not like the way the Cathars rejected papal authority, and this led to the crusade against them and the persecution and death of most of the Cathars. The Cathar teachings were also deliberately distorted so that the Catholics could justify destroying the whole Cathar movement. That's been happening for so long. We have kings that, they wage wars and they call them holy wars. We've had these things happening on behalf of God far before Jesus, right? And it's a justification that they're being told by God to do this, or that they're led by God or chosen by God. And, looking back at those things, it all seems so obvious, perhaps, that it's not real. But if you believe in a God that does those things, this is what they were working with. It was a lack of knowing, or maybe just not even caring, even if they knew the truth. Okay, so in the next, this is a pretty short one. I'll read 18, the Da Vinci Symbolism. It's 2 pages long, including a picture. We were intrigued by the symbolism which underlies the work of Leonardo da Vinci, and were able to ask Ilariel about this. So the Last Supper, I think, is what we're going to talk about. Joanna, the painting of the Last Supper by da Vinci, the figure to the left of Jeshua, is this John or Mary Magdalene? Ilariel, If you tune into the energy of the figures in this painting, it's very clear that this figure is not projecting masculine energy. It's not a young man. This is Mary Magdalene, and I'll show you the picture on the back, but I think most of us have probably seen The Last Supper, but it's good to kind of get a visual right when we're reading about it, especially if you haven't seen it for a long time. Da Vinci had a very nimble and subtle consciousness, although he very rarely talked about his beliefs. He held many possibilities within his mind, one of which was that he might, in a previous life, have been the disciple John. Because he had focused on this possibility, the painting held a powerful significance for him. By associating himself with John, in effect, he was saying, I can't be there in the picture because I'm the painter, but Mary Magdalene can take my place. After all, we are both beloved disciples. When he was painting this picture, Leonardo was attuning to the events around the Last Supper, and it is the depth of that experience which communicates itself to those who see the painting. Although the layout had to be adapted to fit the available space, there is still a fundamental truth about the painting, which strikes a powerful chord in the observer. So he was talking about, if you tune in, it's very clear that this figure, okay, so I'm trying to figure out which one it is. This one right here. You can't really see it. Wait, let me make sure I'm pointing. Yeah, that one right there. If you look at it closely, it's almost like it could pass for a man or a woman, but when you really, really look at it and you see the placement next to Jeshua, it definitely looks like a woman. I've seen this picture so many times. My grandmother has a huge, beautiful one hanging up in her house. My mother, the same thing. My mother-in-law. So many homes I go into have this huge painting, and I've never stopped to really look at that fact in one particular disciple. Look at the basic design. Between Mary and Jeshua, there's a central focus of energy. On one side, the feminine energy, and on the other, the masculine energy. It is perfectly balanced. The two figures are balanced, and they're both leaning away at the same angle. So yeah, you have Jeshua sort of leaning one way, and Mary Magdalene sort of leaning in the other, and you have this space between them. Neither dominates, and the masculine and feminine balance each other in the painting, as Jeshua and Mary Magdalene balanced each other in life. So there was much symbolism here, and it was entirely intentional that this was so. Joanna, I understand that as he was getting patronage from the church at that time, he couldn't very well put in several females. Ilarial. No, and he couldn't put in more than 12 disciples, but he managed it in a very clever way. He put in Mary instead of John and left the rest to the imagination. Rather a brilliant solution, isn't it? Joanna, we've noticed that much of the controversial material about Mary Magdalene is being presented now in a fictional form. Would you like to comment on this, please? Ilarial. When an idea is particularly challenging, your culture often needs to explore it first at the fictional level before moving on to absorb it as fact. At the level of fiction, perhaps even fantasy, your consciousness is able to accept these ideas without disturbing your belief system. Here, you can mull over these ideas and get used to them. When you find that they are not so dangerous as you might have thought, they are ready to shift over into the realm of fact and be widely accepted throughout your culture. In this way, your creative artists are helping you to broaden your belief system and move your culture on. A general principle emerges from this, and that is this. What is seen as today's fantasy may be accepted as tomorrow's fact. Wow. I like that. Okay, so that completes chapter 18. I told you it was very, very short. And now I think we are going to talk about the next video and the next chapter, the bloodline. Remember, Ilarial did say he would come back to the question, did Jeshua and Mary Magdalene have children? He said he would come back to that. And we have here chapter 19, the existence of a bloodline. So that's chapter 19, which is not very long. I think from here on, I will be able to put together in most of the videos we have left in the chapters, 2 chapters, because some of them are just silly short. It would be like a 5-minute video. So we'll go ahead and put a bookmark in it right there. And yeah, we'll start chapter 19 in the next video. And until I see you again, take care of yourselves and those around you. And I love you all so very much. And I will see you again soon for chapter 19. Bye-bye.